Hey there. I want to take a few moments and just talk to you about the importance of outlining as a way of pre writing and pre drafting before you actually ever do a rough draft. And I want to walk you through the best way to do a simple, basic outline and then walk you through taking that outline into your actual rough draft. So, what you're seeing here is a basic rough draft that I've set up for the college classes I teach. Notice it is already formatted for MLA formatting. It's simply double spaced. It's set at Arial font size 12. I have the page number and the last name at the top, and then I have the correct MLA heading set. It is not important if you do a title for your outlining, but by the time you have your rough draft, you should have a working title going on. When you're doing the outlining, you do want to make sure that you have the title saved, that spot ready, just to make sure that you don't forget about it at the last minute. Remember, the title is not bolded, it's not italicized, it's not in quotes, and it's not in any extra large font or a fancy font. According to MLA formatting, everything is uniform, that same font and size all the way throughout your page. All right, so notice with a basic outline, you're using a set of Roman numerals and alpha and numeric, right? So your first paragraph is always going to be your introduction. And when you think to yourself, what's in the introduction, your answers might be fluid depending on the purpose of your essay. For the college classes I'm teaching, their current assignment is a discourse community profile. And so a profile is simply a definition or explanation of a community, and so they get to choose, but that profile then, because it's that explanation of, it's an expository or informative piece. So there's no argument to be made. So there's not necessarily any main claim statement. This is just simply telling about something, and they're informing their audience, me and their other classmates, about that discourse community that they've so chosen. So with that in mind, my introduction then is going to be that basic background information, that when, where, why, and they might want to connect that relevance or significance. Moving into Roman numeral 2, they're going to want to walk through, for this purpose of this essay, they're going to walk through the elements of a discourse community. And a discourse community always has goals and a shared purpose and shared values. A discourse community always has mechanisms of communication and allows for information and feedback. And then it has specific genres of communication, possibly some specific vocabulary that is unique to that discourse community. It could have silencial relationships. And so, how do they communicate without that word base vocabulary? And then it could have potentially some other elements to it, but those are the biggest hitters for that discourse community profile. And then lastly, you would always want to conclude. Now, if you're not familiar with Roman numerals, you need to brush up. The single I is one, II is two, triple I is three, the IV is four, V is five, and so forth and so forth. If your essay extends past nine, past eight, which is VII, nine would be IX because X in Roman numerals is 10. And from there, it can be really interesting to count. And so after you've used your Roman numerals to identify your paragraphs, you want those subtopics in your paragraphs as the capital letters. You want them as capital letters because then when you are brainstorming deeper subtexts within that paragraph, you would want to think in terms of ones, twos, threes. So if I say when, I'm going to put United States. Let me back up for a second and tell you, for the sample that I'm doing right now, for this video, my discourse community is teachers, associations, and unions, because I am a professional educator, and that's one that I'm very involved in, and I like to stay abreast of news and reports for what's going on in teachers in the United States, specifically my state. And so I want to think of when the United States. I want to think specifically my state. I'm in Texas, and does Texas have any specific? I want to think why, or sorry, oh gosh, I did where first. So if I think when, I know that most of them were formed around the 1970s. Very few associations and unions existed prior to that because the 1970s is when the No Child Left Behind Act came into play, and when several other huge moves were coming into play for American teachers. And so I might think the when is 1970s, the where would be the United States. I want to think specifically Texas, and then I want to think why, and it's to support um, educators and give them some extra strength that they need when working with difficult administrators, maybe legal issues with parents or legal issues with students, and just to make sure then too, parents and administrators are also supported when a teacher has stepped out of bounds. I might want to give some background information. So for this, I'm going to skip right on over to ATPE's website and going to look and see if there's anything that I can just borrow really quickly for the purpose of this essay. And I'm going to say 1975, special year for me, 47 years ago, and I'm going to borrow it. I am not going to plagiarize. So for right now, I'm going to put this background information in quotes. I will paraphrase it later. Please know I will paraphrase it later if I were actually writing this. And this is ATPE, ATPE.org, straight from their website. I will correctly cite it on a works cited page later. Let me leave myself a note to correctly cite in the works cited page later, and let me borrow that link so I can get back to it just in case. Because it does matter which page of that website we were on. So there's my link and a note to correctly cite it in the works cited page later. Remember, this is simply my outline. I'm not actually drafting yet, so I want to make sure that I have everything set up for me to be successful in following MLA formatting and guidelines to avoid plagiarism as necessary. Perhaps I want to skip over to AFT, American Federation of Teachers, and I want to click on the About Us, and I want to see, oh gosh, they have a mission. How can I scroll down? Leadership, resolutions, and history. History is what I want. Post war years, 1950s. Oh, so they go back a lot farther. So let me modify that. 1950s, not 1970s. So 1950s. And I would even want to include some information on American Federation of Teachers. Oh, it was founded in Chicago with 8 local signings in 1916. Let me change that one more time. So when you're researching, don't be afraid of making mistakes and going back and changing. And I want to just borrow this. Yes, I will absolutely cite it later for the purpose of this sample. We're just keeping it right here. Notice my font is a little bit different. So I'm going to go back and change that formatting. Let me go back and make sure that we are all keeping it at size 12 in Arial. And now I'm going aft.org, and I'm going to copy this one. Again, you want to make sure that you set yourself up to be successful later, and you don't want to commit plagiarism. So let me leave myself a little note. Correctly cite in the works cited page. And there is my link. All right, so now I have everything that I could possibly use for a solid introduction. Here is where I'd want to define the goals and the shared purpose. And I could come back and show you where I'm getting the statement of values and their shared goals and purpose. But this one, Texas Teachers in Education, educators are unifying, so to unify educational values. We also want to make sure that we align practices and standards, fix that spelling error, and then another shared value for any union or teacher federation or teacher association is to make sure that we provide quality professional development for all teachers, current and future, and to then provide quality education for students across the nation. So those are some basic goals. I put those in the wrong spot. Let's copy that. I apologize. I put those in the wrong spot. And so now some mechanisms of communication. All right, so they have newsletters. We know that they have emails. They have conventions and seminars. They have professional developments. And we know that they have representatives that can provide that feedback. And I made sure that I included the representatives because if we're looking for information and feedback, and you have well over 50,000 teachers that are members of this, I don't know that number for specific, but we could go back to the website and look if I wanted to, then it's really impossible for one single president of these associations or federations to communicate with all 50,000. So of course, if you're located across the nation, then you're going to have leaders and representatives located at each valuable place. All right. So you get the gist of what to do in the outline, right? For each of these, I would want to make sure that I come down and include evidence from the sources that I'm looking at. This commentary section, I had some students asking me what that commentary was, and this is my thinking. And so the writer's thinking, let me rephrase that. Your thinking, the writer's thinking and explanation about why their chosen text evidence would be important to their essay. If you're writing an argumentative or persuasive essay, then that commentary is really explaining how that text evidence supports your argument. In this case, because the discourse community profile is informative, I really want to link that text evidence to why that would be significant in defining that discourse community. Why is that text evidence really representative of that makeup for that community? So, how does that evidence support that? Unifying educational value, or how does that text evidence really support their relevance or significance? How does that text evidence support that newsletters are an effective form of information in mass communication? So I really want to make sure that explanation is my thinking or the writer's thinking, right? About that profile. So the next thing that my students had asked of me is that I would show them how I take this from the outline into the actual draft. You don't want to think of this outline as wasted steps, wasted time. You want to think of this outline as really doing a lot of the heavy lifting before you have to start that writing process. I don't know about you, but when I sit down to write, and if I stare at that blank screen, I just freeze up. Sometimes I can't think of what to say. So I start with an outline generally because then I can get my ideas on paper. Even if I don't leave that outline or leave those original ideas in that order, that's okay. I've still done a lot of that heavy lifting and I can still pull ideas from my sources right on in. And as silly as it may sound, it helps me to go ahead and put this page number in this header in that position so that I'm just not staring at a blank page. But now I'm going to take this right on in to a rough draft. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to just back up. I want to make sure I always indent each new paragraph. I'm not doing block paragraphs, I'm indenting. And so I want to say something about teachers' unions and associations. What do I think about them? Teachers' unions and associations benefit teachers all across America. They share values and goals, a support system, and ensure teachers can work in stable conditions despite um, everyday challenges they face in their careers. This is what I'm thinking, right? I do know that Texas teachers unions, not just Texas teachers unions, but national unions and national associations do benefit, right? I've benefited from them from before. I've benefited from them from legal advice to retirement advice to advice on which degrees might even be beneficial if I'm wanting to advance in my career. So there are so many things that they do. They do share values and goals. They do share that support system, and they really do make sure that teachers are taken care of because sometimes we're the underappreciated heroes. Not to minimize any other hero in America, but we really do kind of get a bad rap sometimes. Um, and so then I would want to go right on into the when, wheres, and whys, right? The earliest union, let's not say union because some states are non union states like Texas, but Texas does allow associations. The earliest teacher um, association or federation started in 1960 in Chicago in 1916. Remember, that's what I saw on that AT or AFT site, Chicago in 1916. I would want to say why it started. So I'm going to leave a little note, include why it started and how it grew and expanded. Right? I would then want to make sure I cite that source and the text. And I would want to go on and tell other information, right? So I could come in here and I'm giving that background information. And I could say later, another association, teacher association. Ooh, why did I capitalize teacher up here? I love it when I catch typos. Was founded in 1975. TSTA, Texas State Teachers Association, now known as, ooh, hello, thank you, Google, now known as ATPE, American, what is it? American Teachers and Professional, what is it? Association of Texas and Professional Educators. Got to get the name right. Association of Texas Professional Educators. Association of Texas Professional Educators was founded to ensure the public gained more trust in the profession. And I'm going to include some more ideas. So that's the dot 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 blah blah blah. And I want to make sure that I would also cite this. So there you see that I took everything straight from my outline into an introductory paragraph. And then transition to goals and purpose. So notice I took everything straight from my outline into the beginnings of my essay. The more in depth you can build out your outline, the more evidence that you already have included, the more explanation or commentary that you can go ahead and write out, whether it's in complete sentences or whether you have those detailed bullet points, the easier it is for you to draft that actual rough draft. It is totally okay to leave yourself little notes. If I were still writing this for an actual rough draft, I would come in and highlight it because that would just really flag it for me that I would know that I need to come back up and make those changes and I wouldn't miss any of them. And so I would just really want to make sure that I'm going in and I'm building out that essay And that, my friends, is how you take an outline into a rough draft.